So here is something I have been thinking about for a long time now. Adventure Time ran for 10 seasons, 283 episodes, 4 specials, and a spin-off series, and most people remember it as this goofy cartoon about a boy and his stretchy dog going on silly adventures in a candy-coloured fantasy world. But underneath all of that, hidden in background details and throwaway lines and blink and you miss it visual gags, is one of the deepest, most complex mythologies ever built in an animated series. We are talking about a story that begins before the universe existed and stretches forward 1,000 years past the end of human civilization. A story about cosmic cycles of death and rebirth, about an apocalyptic nuclear war, about a man who slowly lost his mind to a cursed crown, and about a bubblegum princess who is way, way older than she looks. Pendleton Ward, the guy who created this show, once described the setting as, and I am paraphrasing here, Candyland on the surface and dark underneath. He said the show takes place after the bombs have fallen and magic has come back into the world, and he meant that literally. The Land of Ooo, where Finn and Jake live, is not some fantasy dimension. It is Earth, our Earth, 1,000 years after a nuclear apocalypse wiped out nearly all of human civilization and mutated everything that survived into the bizarre creatures and kingdoms we see on the show. Tonight, we are going to go through all of it. Every layer of this mythology, from the monsters that existed before time itself, all the way to the distant future, where new adventurers carry on the legacy. This is going to take a while, which is kind of the point, so get comfortable, settle in, and let's start at the very beginning. And I mean the very beginning. Before the universe, before time, before anything. According to the Lich, who is basically the embodiment of death and extinction in this show, there is a hierarchy to existence that goes like this. First, there was nothing. But before there was nothing, there were monsters. That line comes from the Season 6 episode Gold Stars, where the Lich briefly takes over the body of Sweet Pea, this innocent child he was reborn into, and delivers one of the most chilling monologues in the entire series. He says, "Before there was time, before there was anything, there was nothing. And before there was nothing, there were monsters." Just let that sit for a second. The show is telling us that the default state of reality is not emptiness. It is not a void waiting to be filled. The default state is monsters. Primordial, incomprehensible entities that existed in a state we cannot even conceptualize, because concepts like space and time had not been invented yet. We know of at least 3 of these primordial monsters. The first is the Lich himself, or at least the cosmic essence that would eventually become the Lich. The second is Orgalorg, a being so powerful he was once feared as the breaker of worlds and ruled the entire solar system before being cast down to Earth. And the third is Kokontepi, who is barely mentioned in the show, but exists in the same category. These beings predate everything. They predate the Big Bang. They predate the concept of nothing. They are the oldest things in existence. And somehow, when the universe came into being, they survived and carried forward into the new reality. And then there is Golb. Now, Golb is on a different level entirely. Golb is a cosmic entity that embodies chaos and disorder. Not evil exactly, but entropy. The breakdown of order, the dissolution of meaning. Golb can erase beings from existence, corrupt and fuse creatures into monsters, and warp reality itself just by being present. The Lich, in the Season 9 episode Whispers, refers to himself as the last scholar of Golb. That is a really loaded phrase. It suggests that the Lich's desire to end all life is not random malice. It is a philosophical position. He studied under Golb, or at least under the principles Golb represents, and came to the conclusion that existence is a mistake that needs to be corrected. The Lich wants extinction because he genuinely believes that the natural state of reality, the state that existed before the universe, the state of monsters, is the correct one. Everything that came after, life, consciousness, joy, love, all of it, is an aberration, and the Lich wants to put things back the way they were. This is the foundation of everything in Adventure Time. Before there were heroes and villains and candy kingdoms and ice wizards, there were monsters in the dark, and those monsters never really went away. They just took on new forms and waited. Now, the way the universe actually works in Adventure Time is through these things called catalyst comets. And this is where the lore gets really, really intricate. A catalyst comet is a massive comet that strikes Earth roughly every 1,000 years. Each one acts as an agent of change, fundamentally transforming the planet and the beings on it. This was revealed across several episodes, primarily Evergreen and Astral Plane in Season 6, and the comet at the end of that same season. Here is what we know about the comets that have hit Earth so far. The first one we learn about is the Green Comet. This one struck during the Cretaceous period, around 65 million years ago, and this comet was not just a rock, it was the Lich. Or more accurately, it was the cosmic essence that would eventually become the Lich, embodied in a comet that carried with it the desire for extinction. You can tell because the Green Comet has horn-shaped flames and the same green coloration as the Lich himself. When it struck, it caused the mass extinction that wiped out the dinosaurs. So in the Adventure Time universe, the thing that killed the dinosaurs was not just a random asteroid. It was the physical manifestation of cosmic evil slamming into the planet with the explicit intention of ending all life. Before that Green Comet hit, though, something really important happened. An ice elemental named Urgence Evergreen tried to stop it. But we will get into that whole story in detail soon, because it connects directly to the Ice King's crown and the entire curse that destroyed Simon Petrikov's life. For now, just know that the Green Comet hit, the dinosaurs died, and the Lich's essence was deposited on Earth, where it would lay dormant for millions of years until the Mushroom War gave it a physical body. The second comet we know about is the Blue Comet. This one is Finn, or rather the cosmic essence of Finn. The Blue Comet represents the embodiment of all that is good, just as the Green Comet represents all that is evil. When the Blue Comet struck Earth at some point after the Mushroom War, it began a chain of reincarnation that would eventually produce the hero who would stand against the Lich over and over again. Finn's existence is not an accident. He is a cosmic answer to a cosmic threat. The universe created the Lich, and then the universe created Finn to oppose him. The third comet is the Yellow Comet. This one appeared thousands of years before the main events of the show, and a being named Orgalorg tried to absorb it. Orgalorg was the Breaker of Worlds, this ancient primordial monster who had been terrorizing the solar system. Abraham Lincoln, who in the Adventure Time universe is the King of Mars, because of course he is, got fed up with Orgalorg's behavior and sent a four-headed deity named Grob, Gob, Glob, Grod to stop him. Grob, Gob, Glob, Grod defeated Orgalorg and sent him crashing down to Earth, where the planet's gravity crushed his cosmic form into a tiny, harmless shape. A penguin. Orgalorg became Gunter, the Ice King's pet penguin. For 1,000 years, one of the most powerful and dangerous beings in the universe was waddling around the Ice Kingdom, making quacking sounds and getting yelled at for breaking bottles. Nobody knew, not even Gunter himself, because the compression of his form apparently suppressed his memories. The coloration of each comet matches the being it incarnates as. Green for the Lich, blue for Finn, yellow for the comet Orgalorg tried to steal, and some fans have noticed that the yellow coloration is similar to Jake, which raises the tantalizing possibility that the yellow comet might have been a past incarnation of Jake, just as the blue comet was a past incarnation of Finn. That was never explicitly confirmed in the show, but the visual evidence is hard to ignore. And then there is the purple comet, the most recent one, which appeared during Season 6. This one is different from the others because we actually get to meet it face to face. In the episode The Comet, the purple comet arrives at Earth and reveals itself to be something like a sentient god, an ancient entity that has been cycling through incarnations for eons. It tells Finn that the comets have embodied both all that is good and all that is evil. When it says good, the shot focuses on Finn. When it says evil, the Lich appears on screen. The purple comet offers Finn a choice. He can leave his physical body behind, discorporate, and explore the universe as a being of pure consciousness. Or he can stay on Earth and keep being Finn. Finn chooses to stay. He is not ready to give up being human, not ready to give up his friends, his dog, his life, but his father, Martin Mertens, who has been a deadbeat dad throughout the entire series, takes the comet up on its offer. Martin discorporates and disappears into the cosmos, leaving Finn behind one final time. And honestly, it is kind of perfect. Martin was never going to change. He was never going to be the father Finn needed. And the comet offered him the ultimate escape from responsibility, which is exactly what Martin had been chasing his entire life. Before all of this happened, though, before the comet arrived, Orgalorg re-emerged. The encounter with the approaching comet triggered Gunter's suppressed memories, and the penguin transformed back into Orgalorg in all his terrifying cosmic glory, trying once again to absorb the comet's power. But Finn stopped him. Using the grass sword, which had been growing inside his arms since Season 5, Finn tore Orgalorg apart and freed the comet from inside his body. Orgalorg's remnants compressed back down into Gunter, and the penguin went back to his harmless existence. At least until the series finale, when Gunter grabbed the reset ice crown and made a wish. His deepest wish was not to become Orgalorg again. It was to become the Ice King, because after 1,000 years as the Ice King's pet, Gunter had come to admire and love his master, even imitating his mannerisms and personality. So Gunter became the Ice Thing, a penguin-shaped version of the Ice King, ruling the Ice Kingdom with a crown that should have given him cosmic power, but instead gave him a silly imitation of the life he had been observing for centuries. And that brings us to one of the most fascinating and layered pieces of lore in the entire show. The cycle of the comets tells us something profound about the Adventure Time universe. Nothing is random. The monsters, the heroes, the wars, the rebirths, they are all part of an ancient pattern that repeats across millennia. The universe sends agents of change in the form of comets, and those agents take on mortal forms and play out their roles. Generation after generation, Finn is not just a kid with a sword, he is the latest incarnation of a cosmic force of good that has been cycling through lives since before human civilization existed. The Lich is not just a scary skeleton, he is the latest incarnation of a cosmic force of evil that predates the dinosaurs. And the conflict between them is not personal, it is universal. It is built into the fabric of reality itself. That is the kind of mythology this show hid behind episodes about Finn and Jake playing video games and pranking the Ice King. And we are just getting started. Now let's talk about Urgent's Evergreen and the origin of the Ice Crown, because this is where things get really tragic, and this single piece of backstory connects to almost everything else in the show. During the Cretaceous period, roughly 65 million years before the main events of Adventure Time, the world was ruled by dinosaurs and watched over by 4 beings called elementals. These elementals were the embodiments of the 4 classical elements. But in the Adventure Time universe, those elements are ice, fire, candy, and slime. The ice elemental was Urgent's Evergreen. The candy elemental was Chatsbury. The fire elemental was Balthus. And the slime elemental was Slimy D. These 4 beings were immensely powerful, essentially demigods, who maintained the balance of the natural world. All of this was revealed in the Season 6 episode Evergreen, which is one of those episodes that completely recontextualizes the entire show. Because this episode explains where the Ice King's crown came from, why it drives people insane, and why every person who wears it turns into essentially the same character. And the answer is heartbreaking. When the Green Catalyst comet approached Earth, carrying with it the essence of what would eventually become the Lich, Urgent's Evergreen recognized the threat. He knew this comet would cause a mass extinction event. He tried to convince the other 3 elementals that they needed to act, that they needed to build a weapon powerful enough to stop the comet. But Chatsbury, Balthus, and Slimy D refused. They believed the comet was part of a natural cycle, that stopping it would cause irreparable damage to the structure of existence itself. They were worried that Evergreen's weapon would be more dangerous than the comet, and honestly, they were right to worry. Because Evergreen's solution was the Ice Crown. Evergreen created the crown as a wish-granting artifact. The idea was simple. Whoever wore the crown would have their deepest wish granted. Evergreen planned to wear it himself and wish the comet away. But when the other elementals tried to stop him, Evergreen did something that should have been a warning sign about his character. He froze them. He froze his fellow elementals, his peers, his equals, just to get his way. Evergreen was brilliant, but he was also arrogant, impatient, and willing to hurt anyone who stood between him and his goal. This is where the tragedy begins. Evergreen had an apprentice, a small dinosaur he had taken in and named Gunter. Not the same Gunter as the Ice King's penguin, but the name is important and we will get to why. This little dinosaur, Gunter, worshipped Evergreen. He followed him everywhere, tried to learn magic from him, desperately wanted his master's approval. But Evergreen treated Gunter terribly. He was dismissive, cold, occasionally cruel. He saw Gunter as a servant, not a student. He never praised him, never encouraged him, never told him he mattered. When the comet was almost upon them, Evergreen was incapacitated. The only person left to wear the crown was Gunter, and Evergreen, in his desperation, told Gunter to put on the crown and wish for the comet to be destroyed. Gunter tried. He really tried, but the crown does not grant the wish you think about consciously. It grants your deepest, truest wish, the one buried so far down in your psyche that you might not even know it is there. And Gunther's deepest wish was not to save the world. His deepest wish was to be like his master, to be like Evergreen. So the crown transformed Gunter, not into a hero who could stop the comet, into a version of Evergreen as Gunter saw him. A cruel ice wizard who blasted everything with frost and shouted orders at people, because that is who Evergreen was to Gunter. Not a savior, not a genius, just a powerful, cold man who told everyone what to do and froze anyone who disagreed. The comet struck, the dinosaurs died, and the crown, now imprinted with Gunther's wish, carried that template forward through history. Every single person who would ever wear the ice crown would be transformed into a version of Urgent's Evergreen, as seen through the eyes of a traumatized dinosaur apprentice. That is the curse. That is why Simon Petrikov became the Ice King. Not because the crown is evil, because a little dinosaur loved his master so much that being like him was his deepest wish, and his master was too cold to realize what that love meant until it was too late. The name Gunter echoes through the centuries because of this. Simon Petrikov, after being corrupted by the crown, named his penguin companion Gunter. He did not know why. The crown whispered the name to him from across millions of years of embedded memory. And that penguin, as we now know, was actually Orgalorg, a primordial monster compressed by Earth's gravity into a harmless form. So the Ice King spent centuries living with and caring for a being named after the dinosaur, whose broken wish created the very curse destroying his mind. The layers of irony in this show are genuinely staggering. Speaking of Orgalorg, let's dig deeper into his story, because there is more to it than what I have already mentioned. Orgalorg was one of those primordial monsters, the ones who existed before the universe. When reality came into being, Orgalorg found himself in a universe full of planets and stars and living things, and he decided to rule over all of it. He became the tyrant of the solar system, feared by every civilization in the cosmos. His title, the Breaker of Worlds, was not a metaphor. He literally destroyed planets. He brought misery and dread to everyone under his rule. This went on for an unknowable amount of time until Orgalorg made a mistake. When the yellow catalyst comet appeared, Orgalorg tried to absorb it. These comets carry an enormous amount of cosmic power, and Orgalorg wanted that power for himself. But Abraham Lincoln, the king of Mars, would not stand for it. Lincoln sent his champion, the four-headed deity Grob, Gob, Glob, Grod, to deal with the problem. Grob, Gob, Glob, Grod fought Orgalorg in what must have been one of the most spectacular battles in the history of the Adventure Time universe, and ultimately defeated him. Orgalorg was sent plummeting down to Earth, where the intense gravity of the planet crushed and compressed his massive cosmic form into the shape of a small penguin. Here is what is really interesting about Orgalorg as Gunter. For 1,000 years, this ancient world-destroying entity lived as a penguin. He had no memory of who he was. He had no access to his cosmic powers. He just existed as this cute little bird who followed the Ice King around, broke bottles, and occasionally did slightly odd things that nobody questioned because, well, everything in Ooo is slightly odd. But there were hints throughout the series. Gunter was consistently described as the most evil thing Hunson Abadir, the Lord of Evil and Marceline's father, had ever encountered. That was played for laughs in the early seasons, like it was funny that this little penguin was somehow more evil than all the demons in the Nightosphere. But it was not a joke, it was foreshadowing. Hunson Abadir was sensing Orgalorg's residual cosmic malice bleeding through the penguin shell. When the purple comet approached Earth during Season 6, it was like an alarm clock going off in Orgalorg's subconscious. The proximity of that much cosmic energy triggered his dormant memories. He remembered who he was, he remembered what he could do, and he tried again to absorb a catalyst comet, just like he had tried thousands of years earlier. He burst out of his penguin form, reassumed his cosmic shape, and actually managed to swallow the comet before Finn stopped him. After Finn tore him apart, Orgalorg compressed back into Gunter and seemingly went back to being a harmless penguin. But in the series finale, Come Along With Me, something remarkable happened. Golb's invasion caused chaos across all of Ooo, and in the aftermath, the Ice Crown was reset to its essential form, its original wish-granting state. When the crown landed near Gunter, he grabbed it and put it on, and his deepest wish was not to be Orgalorg again. It was to be the Ice King. Gunter, the penguin, despite being an ancient world-destroying cosmic horror, had spent 1,000 years watching the Ice King and had come to genuinely love him. Gunter wanted to be like his master, just like the dinosaur Gunter millions of years earlier. The cycle repeated. The crown found another Gunter who loved his master and wanted to be like him, and it granted that wish. Gunter became the Ice Thing, a penguin-shaped ice wizard who ruled the Ice Kingdom in the image of the king he adored. The symmetry of this is something the writers clearly intended. Two Gunthers, separated by 65 million years, both making the same wish on the same crown, both loving a master who did not fully appreciate them. The Ice Crown is not just a cursed object. It is a monument to unrequited devotion, an artifact that transforms love into obsession across the ages. Now let's talk about the man at the center of all of this. The man who wore the crown for 1,000 years and lost everything because of it. Simon Petrikov. Before the Mushroom War, before the apocalypse, before the Land of Ooo existed, Simon Petrikov was just a guy. A nice, nerdy, glasses-wearing guy who worked as an antiquarian, which is a fancy word for someone who studies and collects ancient artifacts. He lived what seems to have been a completely normal life. He had a career he loved. He had friends, and he had a fiancée named Betty Groff, a woman he adored so much that he called her his princess. That detail becomes devastating later, but we will get to that. Simon's life changed forever when he purchased a strange jeweled crown from an old dock worker in northern Scandinavia. This was the Ice Crown, the same crown that Urgent's Evergreen created 65 million years ago. The same crown that was imprinted with the dinosaur Gunther's broken wish. Simon had no idea what he had bought. He thought it was just an interesting artifact for his collection. He brought it home and put it on his head to make Betty laugh. And the moment it touched him, everything went wrong. The crown immediately seized control. Simon blacked out, experienced terrifying visions, and began blasting ice magic in every direction, while screaming for Betty, calling her his princess. He had no memory of what he did while wearing it. When he came to, Betty was gone. She was terrified by what she had seen, and she left him. Simon never saw her again. This is all revealed in the Season 3 episode, Holly Jolly Secrets Part 2, which is one of those episodes that fundamentally changed how audiences saw the show. Up until that point, the Ice King was just a goofy villain who kidnapped princesses and annoyed Finn and Jake. He was comic relief, he was the butt of jokes, and then this episode showed us his video diaries, recorded on VHS tapes before the Mushroom War, and suddenly the Ice King was the most tragic character on television. In those tapes, Simon documented his own deterioration. He recorded himself losing his mind in real time, speaking into the camera with increasing desperation as the crown's influence grew stronger. His skin was turning blue, his nose was growing longer, his eyes were turning white, his body temperature was dropping to dangerous levels, and worst of all, his memories were disappearing. He was forgetting who he was, who Betty was, what his life had been before the crown. He kept making tapes because he wanted someone, anyone, to know what had happened to him. He wanted a record that Simon Petrikov had existed, that there had been a man inside the Ice King, a man who loved Betty and studied ancient artifacts and wore glasses and had a normal human life. He was watching himself vanish and he could not stop it. The crown's magic had one silver lining, if you can even call it that. It kept Simon alive. When the Mushroom War broke out and nuclear weapons devastated the planet, Simon survived because the crown made him functionally immortal. He could not age, could not be killed by radiation or nuclear fallout, could not die from the injuries that were killing everyone else on the planet. But the price of that survival was his sanity and his identity. Every day, the crown took a little more of Simon away and replaced it with the Ice King. During this period, in the years right after the war, something beautiful and heartbreaking happened. Simon found a little girl. She was alone in the wreckage of civilization, crying in the ruins of what had once been a city. Her name was Marceline. She was half human, half demon, the daughter of a human woman named Elise and Hunson Abadir. the Lord of the Nightosphere. She was maybe 6 or 7 years old, and she was completely alone. Simon took Marceline in. He became her protector, her caretaker, her surrogate father. This is shown in the Season 5 episode Simon and Marcy, which takes place 996 years before the main events of the show. The episode has a time card that explicitly states this, giving us one of the most precise dates in the show's timeline. In that episode, Simon and young Marceline wander through the frozen ruins of a post-apocalyptic city, scavenging for food and shelter. Simon fights off mutated creatures, keeps Marceline's spirits up with songs and stories, and constantly battles against the crown's pull on his mind. There is a specific moment in that episode that gets me every time. Simon is wearing the crown to protect Marceline from a group of toxic ooze monsters, and you can see the crown taking over in real time. His voice changes, his eyes go blank, but even as the Ice King persona starts to surface, some part of Simon is still fighting to stay present for this little girl who needs him. He clings to his humanity with everything he has, not for himself, but for her. He also gave Marceline a stuffed toy, a little rag doll named Hambo, which became her most treasured possession for the next 1,000 years. That rag doll represented everything Simon was to her: safety, warmth, love, the only person who ever chose to take care of her after her world ended. But Simon knew he was running out of time. The crown was winning. Every time he used it to protect Marceline, he lost a little more of himself. He could feel the gaps in his memory growing wider. He was forgetting Betty. He was forgetting his own name. He was forgetting why he cared about this little girl, following him through the ruins of the world. And the thing that terrified him most was not losing his mind. It was the possibility that one day he would hurt Marceline without even knowing who she was. So he left her. He wrote her a letter that we hear in the Season 4 episode I Remember You, and it is one of the most emotionally devastating pieces of writing in the history of animated television. In the letter, Simon apologizes for everything he is about to become. He tells Marceline that he loves her. He tells her he is sorry that he has to go, and he asks, in a voice that is already starting to fade, if anyone will remember him, if anyone will save him. Nobody did. Simon Petrikov disappeared, and the Ice King took his place permanently. For 1,000 years, this kind, gentle, bookish man existed as a deranged ice wizard who kidnapped princesses and lived alone in a frozen castle with a penguin for company. And the saddest part is that the Ice King's obsession with kidnapping princesses is a twisted echo of Simon's love for Betty. He called Betty his princess. The crown scrambled that memory, corrupted it, turned it into a compulsion. The Ice King does not know why he kidnaps princesses. He just knows that he desperately wants a princess to love him, because somewhere, buried under 1,000 years of madness, Simon Petrikov is still calling out for Betty. And Betty. Let's talk about what happened to Betty, because her story is just as tragic as Simon's, maybe even more so. When Simon put on the crown and scared Betty away, she did not just leave and move on with her life. Years later, after Simon had fully become the Ice King, a series of magical events briefly restored Simon's original mind in the Season 5 episode Betty. But without the crown keeping him alive, Simon was dying. Betty, who had been pulled from the past through a time portal Simon accidentally opened, watched the man she loved die in front of her. In a desperate act, she grabbed the crown and put its magic back into Simon, saving his life, but dooming him to become the Ice King again. From that point on, Betty dedicated her entire existence to finding a way to save Simon permanently. She became a wizard herself after donning Magic Man's hat in the episode You Forgot Your Floaties. Magic Man's powers came with his madness, and Betty began to lose her grip on reality, just like Simon had. She tried to hack the Ice Crown from the inside, inserting an AI version of herself into its systems in the Season 7 episode Broke His Crown. She tried everything, and nothing worked. In the series finale, Come Along With Me, Betty's story reached its conclusion. When Golb invaded Ooo and Simon, Betty and Finn were swallowed by the cosmic entity, the digestive process of Golb stripped them all down to their essential forms. The crown's magic was removed from Simon, and he became himself again. Betty lost her wizard powers and became human again. For one brief moment, Simon and Betty were reunited. Two ordinary humans, free of curses and crowns and cosmic entities, face to face for the first time in over 1,000 years. but it could not last. Golb was still a threat to everything and everyone. Betty, holding the reset crown in its original wish-granting form, tried to wish Golb away, but the crown grants your deepest wish, not your conscious one, and Betty's deepest wish was not to destroy Golb. It was to protect Simon, so the crown fused Betty with Golb, creating a new entity, a hybrid being that fans call Golbetty. This new entity left Ooo through a portal, taking Betty with it forever. Simon got his mind back, he got his humanity back, but he lost Betty permanently. She sacrificed herself to become part of a cosmic horror so that Simon could live as a normal human again. And Simon has to live the rest of his life, knowing that the woman he loved is out there somewhere, merged with an incomprehensible entity of chaos, and she did it because she loved him too much to let him suffer anymore. In the spin-off series Adventure Time, Fiona and Cake, we see Simon struggling with this aftermath. He falls into depression, trying to process the loss of Betty, the loss of his magic, the loss of 1,000 years of his life that he barely remembers. He eventually meets Golbetty one more time, makes his peace with her sacrifice, and decides to move forward. He gets a job teaching the history of magical artifacts at Wizarts in Wizard City. He moves in with Marceline and Princess Bubblegum. He starts to build a new life, but he will never be whole again. The crown took 1,000 years from him. Betty took herself away to save him, and the man who just wanted to study ancient artifacts and love his princess is left standing in the wreckage of everything the crown destroyed, trying to figure out how to be Simon Petrikov in a world that only ever knew him as the Ice King. Moving forward, let's talk about the event that changed the world itself, the thing that turned Earth into Ooo and ended human civilization as we know it. The Great Mushroom War. The Great Mushroom War. That is what the survivors called it, though calling it a war is almost an understatement. It was the end of everything. A global nuclear exchange that occurred roughly 1,000 years before the main events of Adventure Time, sometime in the late 20th or early 21st century. The show never gives us an exact date, but we can narrow it down based on a few clues. In the episode Simon and Marcy, Simon is heard singing the theme song from Cheers, a sitcom that premiered in 1982. He also references other pop culture from the 1980s. So the war happened sometime after that, but probably not too much later. The world of Adventure Time is essentially our world, maybe 30 or 40 years from now, after everything went wrong. The name Mushroom War comes from the mushroom-shaped clouds produced by nuclear explosions. You can see the remains of nuclear weapons in the show's opening credits if you look carefully. There are bombs and missiles half buried in the grass, rusting away in what used to be battlefields. The show never tells us who was fighting or why. It does not matter. What matters is that someone dropped a bomb. Not just any bomb, the mushroom bomb. The mushroom bomb was different from a standard nuclear weapon. It was mutagenic, meaning it did not just destroy, it transformed. The radiation and chemical fallout from this bomb rewrote the genetic code of everything it touched. Plants became sentient, animals gained the ability to speak and think, inanimate objects came to life, Bubblegum became a person, candy became a civilization. The entire biological and physical landscape of the planet was fundamentally altered by this single detonation. And the bomb also gave the Lich his physical body. The cosmic essence of the Lich, which had been dormant on Earth since the green catalyst comet killed the dinosaurs 65 million years earlier, was awakened by the mushroom bomb's detonation. In the blast zone, a person was submerged in the mutagenic waste produced by the bomb. The Lich possessed that person, using their body as a vessel, and rose from the wreckage as the skeletal, terrifying figure we see in the show. So the same bomb that ended human civilization also gave birth to the most dangerous being in the universe. We know this because of what happens in the Season 5 episodes, Finn the Human and Jake the Dog. In those episodes, Finn makes a wish that the Lich never existed. The wish creates an alternate timeline called Farm World, where Simon Petrikov managed to stop the mushroom bomb from detonating by using the ice crown to freeze it. Simon died under the weight of the frozen bomb, crushed by the missile, but because the bomb never went off, the Lich was never created and humanity survived. The world was frozen for a long time by the crown's uncontrolled magic, but it was not destroyed. This proves that the mushroom bomb was the single event that separated the old human world from the new world of Ooo. Remove the bomb and you remove everything that makes Adventure Time what it is. The immediate aftermath of the war was devastating. Nearly all of humanity was wiped out. The few survivors scattered across the ruins of civilization, trying to find shelter, food, and safety in a world that was rapidly mutating around them. Simon and Marceline wandered through the wreckage together, as we discussed. Marceline's mother, Elise, wandered with young Marceline in the first year after the war, before dying from what is heavily implied to be radiation poisoning. The episode Everything Stays, from the Stakes miniseries, shows Elise sending Marceline away to find a fallout shelter called the Clubhouse. When Marceline finally reaches it, she finds the blast door open and the skeletal remains of the people who had been hiding inside. The shelter failed, everyone in it died. Marceline was completely alone. Other survivors managed through supernatural or technological means. Mo, the creator of BMO, kept himself alive using artificial organs and cybernetic replacements, slowly becoming more machine than human over the centuries. Patience. St. Pim, the ice elemental of that era, froze herself beneath the sea before the bomb dropped, putting herself into a 1,000-year cryogenic sleep. And a tribe of humans led by a man called Two-Bread. Tom survived long enough to build a makeshift community in the forests of Ooo before deciding to flee the mainland entirely. They loaded onto a renovated freighter and sailed away from Ooo, searching for a safer place to live. This happened approximately 15 years after the war, and it connects directly to Marceline's story and to the fate of all remaining humans, which we will get to later. The war left scars everywhere. Throughout the show, you can see the remnants of human civilization if you know where to look, cars buried in the ground, skeletons in the soil, rusted out buildings overtaken by candy or vegetation. The tree fort where Finn and Jake live is built on top of the remains of a pre-war structure. The Candy Kingdom itself is built over a pond of nuclear waste, which the episode The Vault reveals when Shoko falls into a river of toxic green chemicals running directly beneath the castle. And then, out of all that destruction, new civilizations began to emerge. The mutagenic fallout from the bomb did not just end the old world, it created a new one. The radiation rewrote the rules of biology, and the magic that had been dormant in the world since before the war came flooding back. Pendleton Ward said the show takes place after the bombs have fallen and magic has come back into the world. That is literal. The Mushroom War cracked open the barrier between science and magic, and the result was Ooo, a world where candy can think, fire can feel, ice can remember, and slime can dream. Which brings us to one of the most fascinating origin stories in the show, the birth of the Candy Kingdom and the being who created it, Princess Bonnibel Bubblegum. Princess Bubblegum is not human. She is not even a normal candy person. She is the living incarnation of the Candy Elemental, the latest in a cycle of reincarnation that stretches back to Chatsbury, the original Candy Elemental who existed during the age of dinosaurs alongside Urgent's Evergreen. Bubblegum's physical form emerged from something called the Mother Gum, a massive blob of sentient pink gum that developed in the years following the Mushroom War. The mutagenic radiation from the bomb, combined with the resurgence of magic, caused this blob of gum to become alive, and eventually to produce a conscious being. That being was Bonnibel Bubblegum. The Season 10 episode. Bonnibel Bubblegum shows us her early days. She started as a child, alone in the world, with no one to talk to except her own creations. The first beings she made were Uncle Gumbald, Aunt Lolly, and Cousin Cheekle. She created them to be her family, to give herself the companionship and love she did not have. For a while, it worked. They were a family. But Gumbald was ambitious. He had visions of building a great city, a candy kingdom, with himself at the helm. When Bubblegum disagreed with his plans, Gumbald tried to turn her into a simple-minded candy person using a substance he called Dum-Dum Juice. He wanted to dumb her down so he could take control. But Bubblegum fought back. In the struggle, the bottle of Dum-Dum Juice shattered in Gumbald's hand, and the juice splashed onto him instead, transforming him into a punch bowl. The same thing happened to Lolly and Cheekle, who were turned into the candy people, Manfred and Crunchy. They forgot who they had been. Only Bubblegum remembered, so Bubblegum was alone again. Her family was gone, transformed into mindless candy creatures by their own weapon, and she decided that if she could not have a family, she would build a kingdom. She took the nickname Princess, which Gumbald had used sarcastically to mock her, and made it her actual title. She founded the Candy Kingdom, created the Candy People, built the Gumball Guardians to protect them, and devoted her life to ruling and protecting beings she had made with her own hands. One of her earliest and most troubled creations was the Earl of Lemongrab. Bubblegum created Lemongrab as an experiment, trying to make a new kind of candy person using lemons instead of sugar. The result was, as she put it, her first experiment gone wrong. Lemongrab was sour in every possible way. He was high-strung, paranoid, unable to connect with the sweet candy people around him. He screamed constantly, sent people to the dungeon for minor infractions, and could not understand why nobody liked him. According to Jesse Moynihan, one of the show's writers, Bubblegum shipped Lemongrab off to his own castle because he does not get along with others. She essentially banished her own creation because she did not know how to fix him. Lemongrab lived in isolation for years, growing more bitter and unstable. When Bubblegum was temporarily de-aged to 13 in the Season 3 episode Too Young, Lemongrab returned to claim the throne, technically being older and therefore the heir. His brief reign was a disaster. He screamed at everyone, sentenced people to 1,000,000 years in the dungeon, and generally proved that isolation had not improved his temperament. Bubblegum eventually tried to help him by creating a second Lemongrab, a clone, so the original would have someone who understood him. It worked at first. The two Lemongrabs were happy together, built a community of lemon people, and seemed to find peace, but then things went dark. The original Lemongrab became a tyrant. He ate half of his clone. He put shock collars on his citizens. He turned Castle Lemongrab into a totalitarian state. The clone, Lemongrab 2, tried to rebel against his oppressor, and the original Lemongrab ate him completely. Eventually, a lemon child named Lemonhope overthrew the tyrannical Lemongrab by playing music that caused him to explode. Bubblegum rebuilt Lemongrab from the combined remains of both originals, creating a third, hopefully more stable version. The Lemongrab saga is one of the most disturbing storylines in Adventure Time, and it raises serious questions about Bubblegum's role as a creator and ruler. She made Lemongrab, recognized he was flawed, and instead of helping him, she sent him away. She left him alone in a castle with no guidance, no therapy, no support. And when he inevitably developed problems, she tried to fix him with more creation rather than actual care. Bubblegum is brilliant, compassionate, and deeply protective of her candy people. But she is also controlling, sometimes authoritarian, and has a tendency to treat her creations as experiments rather than beings with their own needs and feelings. Now let's talk about Marceline, because her story spans the entire history of Ooo and connects to almost every other major character in the show. Marceline the Vampire Queen is over 1,000 years old. She was born before the Mushroom War, the daughter of a human woman named Elise and Hunson Abadir, the immortal ruler of the Nightosphere, which is basically the Adventure Time version of Hell. This makes Marceline half human and half demon, which is why she survived the apocalypse and why she ages so slowly. Her early life after the war was nothing but loss. Her mother died from what was almost certainly radiation poisoning within a year of the bomb dropping. She was found by Simon Petrikov, who became her surrogate father and took care of her for several years as they wandered through the ruins of civilization together. But Simon's mind was deteriorating under the Crown's influence, and eventually he had to leave her to protect her from what he was becoming. So Marceline lost her second parent figure, not to death, but to madness. Her biological father, Hunson Abadir, did eventually come back into her life, but that relationship was immediately strained by what might seem like a trivial incident, but actually carries enormous emotional weight. Hunson ate Marceline's fries. This is shown in the Season 2 episode Memory of a Memory, and while eating someone's French fries sounds like a silly complaint, in context it represents something much deeper. Marceline was a child who had lost her mother, lost Simon, and was desperately looking for someone, anyone, to show her that they cared about her. Her father eating her fries, this small selfish act, told her that he did not care about her feelings, that he would always put his own desires first. It was the final straw in a childhood defined by abandonment. Marceline spent the next several centuries wandering Ooo alone. She had adventures, made friends, lost friends, and eventually fell in with a group of vampires. This is where the Stakes miniseries picks up her story. Approximately 15 years after the Mushroom War, a tribe of surviving humans, led by Two-Bread Tom, was preparing to leave Ooo on a freighter. They were being hunted by vampires who fed on human survivors. Marceline decided to protect them. She became a vampire hunter, systematically tracking down and killing vampires one by one. Each time she killed a vampire, she absorbed their powers. She gained the ability to shapeshift from the Hierophant. She gained the ability to fly from the Fool. She gained the power to heal from the Moon. But the final vampire she faced was the Vampire King himself. And during their battle, the Vampire King bit her. Marceline killed him, absorbing his soul, but his bite turned her into a vampire in the process. She became the thing she was trying to destroy. The last vampire hunter became the last vampire. Two-Bread Tom's tribe escaped safely on the freighter, and Marceline was left behind, now immortal and undead, carrying the powers and the curse of every vampire she had destroyed. For the next 1,000 years, Marceline lived in Ooo as the Vampire Queen. She had relationships that came and went. She dated a wizard named Ash, who turned out to be emotionally abusive and ultimately sold her beloved Hambo, the stuffed toy Simon had given her, to a sky witch named Maya. She formed a deep friendship with Princess Bubblegum that eventually became something more. The relationship between Marceline and Bubblegum is one of the show's most carefully developed storylines. They were close friends for years, possibly more, before having a falling out. The Season 7 episode Varmints shows them reminiscing about their past together, and Bubblegum admits that her growing responsibilities as ruler of the Candy Kingdom caused her to push Marceline away. They drifted apart but never stopped caring about each other. Over the course of the series, they slowly rebuilt their relationship. Bubblegum went to extraordinary lengths to recover Hambo from the Sky Witch because she knew what it meant to Marceline. They fought side by side during the Stakes miniseries. They supported each other through crisis after crisis. And in the series finale, Come Along With Me, after Marceline saved Bubblegum from one of Golb's monsters, they kissed. It was the confirmation of what the show had been building toward for years. Marceline and Bubblegum were not just friends, they were in love. The epilogue of the finale showed them together. A vampire and a candy elemental, two immortal beings who had found each other across 1,000 years of history. Marceline's story is the emotional backbone of Adventure Time. She is the character who connects the pre-war world to the present. She knew Simon before he was the Ice King. She watched civilization end and rebuild. She loved and lost and loved again across centuries. And through all of it, she carried the music and the memories and the scars of everyone she had ever known. Marceline is also, importantly, the show's most prolific musician. She plays bass guitar, sings with a raw, emotional honesty that cuts through the show's light-hearted tone and uses music as her primary way of processing the immense weight of her experiences. When she cannot say something directly, she sings it. When she cannot face a memory head-on, she writes a song about it. Her music is her therapy, her diary, her connection to every version of herself she has been across 1,000 years. The songs she writes in the show, from her sarcastic rocker anthems to the quiet heartbreaking ballads like I'm Just Your Problem and Everything Stays, are not just good songs. They are windows into the inner life of someone who has lived longer than most civilizations and still has not figured out how to say what she feels without a melody to carry the words. There is a reason her song Everything Stays became the unofficial anthem of the show, because Marceline understands better than anyone that things change and people leave, but the mark they make on you stays forever. Now let's dig into something that most casual fans never think about, but that completely changes how you understand the world of Adventure Time, the elemental cycle. The 4 elementals are ice, fire, candy, and slime. They are not just powerful beings. They are fundamental forces of the Adventure Time universe, like gravity or electromagnetism, but with personalities and feelings, and the ability to reincarnate across eras. Every time an elemental dies, their essence passes on to a new host, creating a chain of incarnation that stretches back millions of years. We already talked about the original set. Urgent's Evergreen was the first ice elemental we know of, the one who created the crown. Chatsberry was the original candy elemental. Balthus was the fire elemental, and Slimy D was the slime elemental. They existed during the Cretaceous period and witnessed the green catalyst comet, the one that carried the Lich's essence, crash into the Earth and wipe out the dinosaurs. After that extinction event, the elementals reincarnated. The show gives us glimpses of intermediate incarnations, but focuses mostly on two eras: the era just before the Mushroom War and the present era of the show. In the pre-war era, the ice elemental was a woman named Patience Pim. Unlike Evergreen, who was aggressive and willing to freeze anyone who disagreed with him, Patience was cautious and deliberate. When she realized the Mushroom War was coming and that nuclear devastation was imminent, she chose to freeze herself beneath the ocean floor, encasing herself in ice and entering a 1,000-year hibernation. She planned to sleep through the apocalypse and wake up in a new world where she could find the other elementals and unlock their full potential, and that is exactly what she did. 1,000 years later, Patience thawed out and immediately began searching for the current incarnations of the other elementals. She found them. The current ice elemental was, well, it is complicated. The Crown had essentially created a pseudo-ice elemental in the Ice King, but the true elemental cycle had continued independently. The current candy elemental was Princess Bubblegum. The current fire elemental was Flame Princess, and the current slime elemental was Slime Princess. Patience was obsessed with unleashing the full magical potential of all four elementals. She believed that together, at full power, they could reshape reality itself. In the Elements miniseries during Season 9, she got her wish. She activated a mega elemental spell that transformed all of Ooo. The entire land was divided into 4 elemental zones. The Candy Kingdom became a nightmarish candy wasteland where everyone was forcibly converted into blissed-out candy zombies. The Fire Kingdom became a realm of pure destructive flame. The Slime Kingdom became a gelatinous blob of complacency, and the Ice Kingdom became a frozen wasteland of apathy. The elementals themselves were transformed into pure embodiments of their element. Bubblegum became a towering candy monster. Flame Princess became a raging inferno. Slime Princess became an enormous blob. Each of them lost their individual personality and became nothing but their element. Pure and overwhelming and terrifying. This is what happens when the elementals reach full power. They stop being people and become forces of nature. The only person who could stop it was Lumpy Space Princess. And here is something really interesting that the show reveals during this storyline. Lumpy Space Princess is the anti-elemental. She represents lumps, which in the Adventure Time universe means something like raw, unrefined, authentic selfhood. While the 4 elementals represent order, structure, and transformation, Lumpy Space Princess represents the rejection of all imposed order. She is chaos in the most personal, individualistic sense. She does not want to be candy or fire or ice or slime. She wants to be herself, lumps and all. When Lumpy Space Princess activated her anti-elemental power, it reverted everyone in Ooo back to their true shape. The elemental spell was broken. Bubblegum, Flame Princess, and Slime Princess returned to their normal selves. Patient Street Pim, whose plan had backfired catastrophically, was left to reckon with the consequences of her obsession. The elemental cycle tells us something important about how the Adventure Time universe works. These 4 forces, ice, fire, candy, and slime, are woven into the fabric of reality. They reincarnate endlessly, finding new hosts in every era, maintaining a balance that keeps the world functioning. When that balance is disrupted, when one elemental becomes too powerful, or when someone tries to force them all to their full potential at once, the results are catastrophic. The elementals are meant to exist in balance, in tension with each other, not to be unleashed. And there is a beautiful parallel here with the catalyst comets. The comets bring change from outside, cosmic forces that crash into the planet and reshape it every 1,000 years. The elementals maintain balance from inside, cycling through incarnations and holding the world together between cataclysms. The universe has a rhythm, the heartbeat, and these 2 systems, the comets and the elementals, are the systole and diastole of that cosmic pulse. Now let's talk about Finn's reincarnation chain in more detail, because this is one of the most mind-bending pieces of lore in the entire show. In the Season 5 episode The Vault, Finn undergoes a hypnotic regression guided by BMO to explore his past lives. What he finds is extraordinary. His soul, his essence, whatever you want to call it, has been cycling through incarnations for millions of years. He was the blue catalyst comet, the embodiment of cosmic good that struck Earth and began the cycle of heroism. After that, he reincarnated as a butterfly, then as a strange pink, blob-like creature that existed in another dimension entirely, and then as a woman named Shoko. Shoko is probably the most important of Finn's past lives, because her story directly parallels and informs Finn's own life in ways he does not even realize. Shoko was a one-armed thief who lived in the early days of Ooo, hundreds of years before Finn was born. According to her own account in the vault, her parents sold her right arm for a computer and then abandoned her at a dojo. She grew up without family, without security, without any reason to trust anyone. She became a criminal out of necessity, working for a gang called the Bath Boy Gang, who threatened to kill her if she did not steal for them. Shoko had a companion, a large white tiger. This tiger was confirmed by writer Jesse Moynihan to be a past life of Jake. So even across incarnations, Finn and Jake found each other. The boy and his dog, the thief and her tiger, the comet and whatever Jake's cosmic counterpart might be. They are bound together across lifetimes. The Bath Boy Gang gave Shoko a job. She had to infiltrate the early Candy Kingdom and steal Princess Bubblegum's amulet. Now remember, Bubblegum is functionally immortal. She has looked the same for hundreds of years, so the Bubblegum that Shoko met is the same Bubblegum that Finn knows. Shoko snuck into the Candy Kingdom by faking an injury, and Bubblegum took her in, cared for her, and befriended her. Bubblegum even gave Shoko a mechanical arm to replace the one she had lost, which is an eerie foreshadowing of Finn's own recurring arm loss throughout the series. Shoko genuinely liked Bubblegum. For the first time in her life, someone was kind to her without wanting something in return. But the Bath Boy Gang was threatening her life, and Shoko was not brave enough or strong enough to defy them. She stole the amulet, and as she tried to escape, the Gumball Guardians blasted her off a platform and she fell into a river of toxic radioactive waste running beneath the Candy Kingdom. Bubblegum watched and could not save her. The toxic waste mutated Shoko, turning her into a slug-like creature. She crawled out of the river, mutated and dying, and made her way to a small tree sapling growing in a field near the Candy Kingdom. She died at the base of that tree, still clutching Bubblegum's amulet. Over the centuries, the tree grew around her body. That tree eventually became the tree fort where Finn and Jake live. Shoko's remains were literally embedded in the foundation of Finn's home, and the stolen amulet was buried with her in the floorboards of the kitchen. This is what haunts Finn. In the creeps, earlier in the series, Finn is terrorized by a ghost that he cannot explain. He represses the memory, putting it in a mental space he calls the vault, but the ghost keeps coming back because it is not a random haunting. It is Shoko, his own past life, trying to get his attention, trying to get him to find the amulet and return it to Bubblegum so she can finally rest. When Finn undergoes the hypnotic regression and learns the truth, he immediately calls Bubblegum, tears up the floorboards, and returns the amulet to her. Shoko's ghost is at peace. The cycle of guilt is broken, but the implications linger. Finn's intense attraction to Princess Bubblegum throughout the early seasons of the show is not just a childish crush. It is a soul-deep echo of Shoko's relationship with Bubblegum, a past life's guilt and love bleeding through into the present. Finn is drawn to Bubblegum because his soul remembers loving her, and his soul remembers betraying her, and some part of him has been trying to make up for Shoko's sin ever since he was born. And the arm thing. Finn loses his right arm multiple times throughout the series. It gets torn off, regrown, replaced with mechanical prosthetics, transformed into a grass sword, and removed again. Shoko was missing her right arm. The pattern of arm loss follows Finn across incarnations, like the universe keeps reminding him of Shoko's wound, the arm her parents sold for a computer before abandoning her. The reincarnation system in Adventure Time is not just a cool piece of mythology. It is the engine that drives the entire story. Finn is not special because he is brave or because he has a magic sword. He is special because he is the latest incarnation of a cosmic force that has been fighting for good since before the dinosaurs went extinct. Every heroic thing Finn does, every time he stands up against the Lich or protects someone in danger, he is fulfilling a role that the universe assigned to him millions of years ago. He is the counterbalance to the Lich, the good that answers evil, the life that answers death. And he did not choose this. He was born into it. The comet chose Earth, and Finn is what the comet became. And that brings us to the Lich himself. Because if Finn is the embodiment of cosmic good, the Lich is his opposite number, the embodiment of cosmic evil. And his story is even older and even darker than you might think. The Lich is the main antagonist of Adventure Time. Not a main antagonist, the main antagonist. Every other villain in the show, the Ice King, Orgalorg, Uncle Gumbald, the Vampire King, they are all threats, but they are finite threats with finite goals. The Lich wants one thing and one thing only, the extinction of all life, not the conquest of the world, not power, not wealth, not revenge, extinction, the end of everything that lives, everywhere, forever. His soul is ancient. It was deposited on Earth via the Green Catalyst comet during the Cretaceous period, the same comet that killed the dinosaurs. For 65 million years, that essence lay dormant, waiting. When the mushroom bomb detonated at the end of the Mushroom War, the mutagenic energy of the blast finally gave the Lich a physical form. A human being was submerged in the mutagenic waste produced by the bomb, and the Lich possessed that person, transforming them into the skeletal, rotting, nightmarish figure we see in the show. The Lich is incredibly powerful. He can control minds with his voice, commanding anyone who hears him to obey. He can kill with a touch, draining the life from living things. He can project green fire that burns with the essence of death itself. He was so dangerous that the hero Billy, who was Finn's inspiration and the greatest hero in Oo's history, had to personally fight him and imprison him in amber, inside the heart of a giant tree in the middle of the Candy Kingdom. That prison held for years, until the Lich eventually broke free and resumed his crusade. What makes the Lich terrifying is not just his power, it is his patience and his certainty. He does not get angry, he does not gloat, he does not monologue about his plans. He simply acts with the calm confidence of someone who knows that time is on his side. He has been defeated and imprisoned and transformed and reborn multiple times throughout the show, and every single time he finds a way to continue. Because extinction is not a project that can fail, it is an inevitability that the Lich is merely accelerating. In the Season 5 episodes, Finn the Human and Jake the Dog, the Lich reaches the Time Room, a dimension outside of normal space-time, where Prismo, the Wishmaster, grants wishes. The Lich's wish is the extinction of all life. He does not ask for it, he does not negotiate, he simply states it, and Prismo, bound by the rules of his existence, has to grant it. Finn makes a counter-wish, which creates the Farm World timeline, and Jake makes a wish to bring them back, which cancels the Lich's wish. But for one horrible moment, the Lich got exactly what he wanted. All life, everywhere, blinked out of existence. The Lich was eventually defeated in a particularly unexpected way. After being dunked in the blood of a Citadel Guardian, the Lich was reborn as a giant baby who became known as Sweet Pea. Sweet Pea has no memory of being the Lich. He is innocent, kind, and gentle. He goes to school with the other kids in the Candy Kingdom. He makes friends, he eats lunch. He is, by all appearances, just a really big, really sweet kid. But the Lich is still in there. In the Season 6 episode Gold Stars, Sweet Pea has a nightmare that causes the Lich to briefly resurface. His eyes glow green, his voice drops to that horrible ancient register, and he delivers the monologue about how, before there was nothing, there were monsters. Then Sweet Pea wakes up, scared and confused, with no memory of what just happened. The Lich is dormant, not dead. He is a passenger in Sweet Pea's body, waiting for the moment when he can reassert himself. In the opening sequence of the series finale, set 1,000 years in the future, we see Shermie and Beth, the new Finn and Jake, riding on the head of what appears to be an enormous, fully grown Sweet Pea. This implies that Sweet Pea grew into a giant over the centuries, and that the Lich remained dormant inside him for that entire time. Whether the Lich ever re-emerges, or whether Sweet Pea's kindness is strong enough to keep him contained forever, is left as one of the show's great unanswered questions. The Lich's connection to Golb adds another layer to all of this. When he calls himself the last scholar of Golb, he is positioning himself not just as a villain, but as a philosopher of destruction. Golb represents entropy, the natural tendency of all systems to break down and dissolve into chaos. The Lich's desire for extinction is not madness. It is a worldview. He believes that life is an aberration, that the universe was better when it was empty, when the only things that existed were the primordial monsters in the dark. He wants to return reality to that state. And on some level, the universe seems to agree with him, because it keeps giving him chances to come back, keeps creating conditions where extinction is possible. Finn is the universe's answer to the Lich, but it is a tenuous answer. Finn is mortal, he ages, he makes mistakes, he sometimes fails. The Lich is patient and eternal. The battle between them is not one that can be won decisively. It is an ongoing struggle, a cosmic tug-of-war between life and death that has been playing out since before time existed and will continue long after Finn and the Lich are both gone, reincarnated into new forms, and fighting the same fight in a new era. That is the depth of Adventure Time's mythology. A children's cartoon about a boy and his dog is actually a story about the fundamental conflict between existence and non-existence, playing out across millions of years of cosmic history. And most people watched it for the fart jokes, which, to be fair, were also pretty good. But before we get to that, there are a few more pieces of obscure lore that I want to walk through, because they connect to the larger mythology in ways that most people miss entirely. First, let's talk about Magic Man, because his story is one of the saddest and most overlooked in the entire show. Magic Man is a Martian, one of several powerful beings who lived on Mars alongside Abraham Lincoln and Grobgobgrod. In his original form, Magic Man was kind, brilliant, and deeply in love with a woman named Margles. Margles was everything to him. She was his partner, his purpose, the center of his world. And then Golb took her. The cosmic entity of chaos abducted Margles, and she was never seen again. Magic Man was devastated. He tried everything to get her back. He used his considerable magical abilities to create a defense device that looked like Margles, a magical construct designed to protect Mars from Golb's return. But the construct was not Margles. It looked like her, sounded like her, but it was a hollow imitation. And Magic Man, in his grief, began to develop feelings for the imitation, unable to separate it from his memories of the real Margles. When the construct activated its defensive programming and transformed into something monstrous, Magic Man tried to stop it, and the experience broke him. He realized that the thing he had been pouring his love into was built from his own nightmares, not from Margles at all. The loss of Margles combined with the failure of the construct shattered Magic Man's mind. He became cruel, erratic, and sadistic. He started using his powers to torment random people for no reason, turning them into objects, cursing them with bizarre afflictions, and generally being a menace to everyone around him. The King of Mars and Grobgobgrod banished him from Mars and sent him to Earth, to Ooo, where he became a recurring nuisance throughout the series. Every awful thing Magic Man does in the show, every cruel prank, every senseless act of magical torment is a grief response. He is a man who lost the love of his life to an incomprehensible cosmic horror and never recovered. His cruelty is not malice. It is pain that has nowhere to go. Eventually, Magic Man loses his powers and is hat to Betty Groff, who takes them in her own desperate quest to save Simon. Without his magic, Magic Man becomes Normal Man, a diminished, pitiable figure who slowly begins to regain some of his original kindness. He even helps Finn and Jake on occasion, though he never fully recovers from the loss of Margles. His story parallels Simon's in a lot of ways. Both men lost the women they loved. Both were driven to madness by that loss. Both had their identities stripped away and replaced by something they would not have chosen. The difference is that Simon's curse was external, imposed by the crown, while Magic Man's curse was internal, born from grief that consumed him from the inside out. Magic Man's connection to Golb also adds another thread to the web of cosmic horror running through the show. Golb took Margles. Golb was later summoned by Betty, who was trying to save Simon, and Golb eventually fused with Betty, taking her away from Simon just as it had taken Margles away from Magic Man. Golb is the great thief of the Adventure Time universe. It takes the people you love and transforms them into something unrecognizable. It is entropy wearing a face, and every character who encounters it is left diminished, grieving, and fundamentally changed. Now here is something else most casual fans do not know. Jake the dog is not a normal dog. He is an alien hybrid, and his origin is genuinely one of the weirdest pieces of lore in the show. In the Season 6 episode Joshua and Margaret Investigations, we learn about the day Jake was born. His parents, Joshua and Margaret, were adventurers and private investigators. During one of their cases, they encountered a shape-shifting alien creature in the woods. The creature bit Joshua on the head, and a few days later, a strange bump began growing on Joshua's head at the sight of the bite. That bump grew and grew until it literally popped, and baby Jake emerged from Joshua's head, fully formed. Jake was not conceived in the normal way. He was not born in the normal way. He is the offspring of his father Joshua and an alien creature, gestated inside a wound on Joshua's head after a parasitic bite. This explains why Jake has powers that no other dog in Ooo possesses. His ability to stretch, grow, shrink, and change shape comes from the alien half of his DNA. His adoptive brother Finn does not know about this origin. Joshua and Margaret apparently decided not to tell their children about the circumstances of Jake's birth, and the truth did not come out until much later in the series. This origin raises all kinds of questions that the show mostly leaves unanswered. What was the alien creature? Where did it come from? Was the bite intentional, or was Jake's creation an accident? The show never fully explains, which is fitting for Adventure Time. Some mysteries are left as mysteries. Not everything needs a neat answer. But there is a fascinating parallel here with Finn's origin. Finn is a cosmic being, a past incarnation of a catalyst comet, reincarnated into human form. Jake is an alien hybrid, born from a parasitic bite, with powers that come from an extraterrestrial source. Neither of them is what they appear to be on the surface. The boy is not just a boy, the dog is not just a dog. They are both something stranger, something older, something connected to forces beyond the ordinary world of Ooo. And they found each other anyway, just like Shoko and her tiger found each other. Just like the comet and whatever Jake's cosmic counterpart is found each other, across lifetimes and incarnations. Let me also tell you about the Enchiridion, because this artifact connects Simon Petrikoff's pre-war life to the cosmic mythology of the show in a way that is easy to miss. The Enchiridion is a book. Specifically, it is a hero's manual, a guidebook for adventurers that Finn receives early in the series as a reward for completing a series of trials. It seems like a fun prop, a cool book that Finn occasionally consults for advice. But the Enchiridion is much more than that. First, Simon Petrikoff discovered the Enchiridion before the Mushroom War. There is a newspaper clipping shown in the episode I Remember You that features Simon holding the Enchiridion, with a headline that implies he brought it back from an archaeological expedition. So Simon, the man who would become the Ice King, was connected to this hero's manual long before Finn was born. The same man who bought the cursed crown also found the book that would one day guide the hero destined to stop the evil the crown's curse helped perpetuate. The threads of fate in this show are tangled in ways that boggle the mind. Second, the Enchiridion is not just a book, it is a key. In the Season 4 finale, the Lich manipulates Finn into using the Enchiridion's power to open a portal to the Time Room, where Prismo resides. The book contains jewels from the crowns of various princesses, and when all the jewels are assembled and the book is activated, it creates a dimensional gateway. The Lich needed this gateway to reach Prismo and make his wish for the extinction of all life. So the Enchiridion, this seemingly wholesome hero's guide, was actually a tool of cosmic-level power that could be used for good or for absolute evil, depending on who wielded it. The Enchiridion was destroyed when the portal opened, but an alternate version of it existed in the Farmworld timeline. In the Fiona and Cake series, the Farmworld Enchiridion plays a role in Betty's attempts to manipulate reality, connecting the book's mythology to the multiverse plotlines of the spin-off. The Enchiridion keeps showing up because it is, like the Ice Crown and the Catalyst Comets, one of those artifacts that exists across timelines and dimensions, a fixed point in the Adventure Time multiverse. And finally, let me tell you about Fern, because his story is one of the most psychologically complex in the entire show, and it does not get nearly enough attention. Fern is a being created when Finn's grass sword, a magical weapon that had been bonded to Finn's arm since Season 5, merged with the Finn sword, an alternate version of Finn that had been trapped inside a sword. The result was a grass clone of Finn who looked like him, sounded like him, and had all of his memories, but was fundamentally a different person. Fern believed he was Finn. He had Finn's memories, Finn's personality, Finn's desires. But he was not Finn. He was a copy, a duplicate, and the existential crisis this created drove him to desperation. Fern wanted to be the real Finn so badly that he tried to replace him. He became jealous, aggressive, and eventually violent. He teamed up with Uncle Gumbald during the Gum War, serving as the Green Knight because Gumbald promised to help him become the one true Finn. Fern was not evil. He was lost. He was a person who had been born into an identity that already belonged to someone else, and he could not figure out who he was if he was not Finn. In the series finale, during the battle with Golb, Fern's grass body began to disintegrate. As he was dying, he finally made peace with his existence. He asked Finn to plant him at the tree fort, at the place where Finn's home had been before Golb's monsters destroyed it. Finn planted the seedling that remained of Fern, and it immediately began to grow into a new tree. A tree that would stand for 1,000 years, growing larger and larger, with the Finn sword reborn at its peak. Fern's story is about identity, about what makes you you. If you have someone else's memories and someone else's personality, are you that person? Or are you someone new? Fern spent his entire existence trying to be Finn, and it was only in his final moments that he realized he did not need to be Finn to matter. He could be something else entirely. A tree, a sword, a monument to the life of the person whose memories he shared. Fern found his own identity in the act of letting go of the identity he had been clinging to, and in a show about cycles and reincarnation, about things ending and beginning again, Fern's transformation from a copy of a boy into a 1,000-year-old tree carrying the reborn sword of that boy's legacy is perhaps the most beautiful example of the show's central philosophy. Nothing ends. Everything changes form. The grass sword became Fern, Fern became a tree, the tree carries the Finn sword, and the Finn sword is claimed by Shermie, who may be Finn's next incarnation. The cycle continues around and around, daily and nightly, in little ways, when everything stays. There is also the Nightosphere, which deserves a mention because it is one of the most fully realized alternate dimensions in the show. The Nightosphere is the demon realm, ruled by Hunson Abadir, Marceline's father. It is not hell exactly, but it functions similarly. It is a chaotic, violent dimension filled with demons and monsters, accessible through a portal that can be opened by drawing a smiley face, dousing it in bug milk, and reciting a specific incantation. Hunson Abadir is the Lord of Evil, a title that sounds impressive until you meet him and realize he is basically an embarrassing dad who happens to eat souls. He wears a business suit. He tries too hard to connect with his daughter. He is genuinely dangerous, capable of sucking the souls out of every living thing in Ooo, but he is also pathetic in a way that makes him oddly sympathetic. He abandoned Marceline when she was a child. He ate her fries. He failed her in every way a father can fail a daughter, but he also clearly loves her in his own broken, inadequate way, and their relationship is one of the show's most nuanced portrayals of a dysfunctional parent-child dynamic. The Nightosphere also connects to the broader cosmic mythology through Hunson's amulet, a pendant that contains the power of the Nightosphere and can transform its wearer into a soul-sucking demon. In the Season 2 episodes, it came from the Nightosphere, and Daddy's little monster, Finn, accidentally puts on the amulet and is briefly transformed into a demon, illustrating how easily the power of the Nightosphere can corrupt even the purest soul. Marceline herself wore the amulet as a child, and the experience scarred her enough that she rejected her father's legacy entirely, choosing to be a vampire queen rather than a demon princess. The Nightosphere represents the Adventure Time universe's version of inherited trauma. Hunson Abadir is evil because that is what the Nightosphere made him. Marceline rejected that inheritance, but she carries the scars of growing up in its shadow. The sins of the father do not have to become the sins of the daughter, but they leave marks that never fully fade. Even 1,000 years later, Marceline is still working through the damage her father's negligence and the Nightosphere's influence caused. Everything stays, for better and for worse. All of these threads, Magic Man's grief, Jake's alien origin, the Enchiridion's cosmic significance, Fern's identity crisis, the Nightosphere's generational trauma, they all weave together into the tapestry that is Adventure Time's mythology. No single thread tells the whole story, but together they create a picture of a universe that is vast, ancient, deeply interconnected, and fundamentally concerned with the same questions that keep real people up at night. Who am I? Why am I here? What happens when I am gone? And does any of it matter? Adventure Time's answer, delivered across 10 seasons and hundreds of episodes, and hidden in background details, and throwaway jokes and songs that make you cry at 2 in the morning, is yes. It matters. All of it. Every moment, every connection, every act of love and courage, and even every mistake. It all matters because it all stays. It changes form, shifts shape, cycles through incarnation after incarnation. But it stays. Alright, with all of those threads in place, let's get back to something I mentioned a while ago. The question of where all the humans went. Because for most of the series, Finn believes he is the last human being alive. And that is not quite true. That belief shapes everything about him. It makes him cling to his friends harder because they are all he has. It makes him throw himself into danger without hesitation because what does he have to lose? It gives him this deep, unspoken loneliness that surfaces in quiet moments when he looks at his reflection and sees the only human face in a world full of candy people and fire elementals and talking dogs. But in the Season 8 miniseries Islands, Finn finally gets answers about where the humans went. And the truth is both more hopeful and more complicated than he imagined. Remember Two Bread Tom. About 15 years after the Mushroom War, this man led a tribe of surviving humans out of Ooo on a renovated freighter. They were fleeing vampires, mutated creatures, and the general danger of living in a post-apocalyptic wasteland where everything was trying to kill them. Marceline actually helped protect this tribe during their escape, which is when she became a vampire hunter and eventually a vampire herself. Two Bread Tom's group sailed away from the mainland, heading out into the ocean, searching for somewhere safe. They found it, a secluded chain of islands far from the mainland, isolated enough that the mutagenic effects of the mushroom bomb had not reached them. Over the next 1,000 years, this community of human survivors thrived. They did not just survive, they built an advanced technological society, more advanced in many ways than the pre-war civilization that had destroyed itself. They had sophisticated medical technology, robotic assistance, and a structured social system designed to keep everyone safe and productive. But there was a catch. The island community became a kind of benevolent prison. The founders, traumatized by the apocalypse that had nearly wiped out their species, were terrified of the outside world. They built their entire society around the principle of never, ever leaving the islands. Anyone who tried to escape was called a hider, and specially trained agents called seekers were sent to hunt them down and bring them back. The islands were a utopia, with one rule: you could never leave. Finn's parents were part of this community. His mother, Minerva, was a helper, which was essentially a combination of doctor and social worker. She devoted her life to taking care of the island's citizens. When a plague hit the community, Minerva was among the victims, but rather than dying, she uploaded her consciousness into a network of robots. She became a digital being, existing as thousands of robotic copies of herself, all dedicated to helping and protecting the human community. She was everywhere and nowhere at the same time, a loving mother who had transcended her physical body to become the island's guardian angel. Finn's father, Martin Mertens, was a different story. Martin was a hider. He wanted off the islands. He did not care about the rules or the community or his responsibilities as a father. He just wanted to be free, even if freedom meant abandoning his infant son. At some point during a failed escape attempt, baby Finn was separated from Martin and ended up drifting across the ocean until he was found on the mainland by Jake's parents, Joshua and Margaret, who adopted him and raised him as their own. Martin eventually ended up in the Citadel, a cosmic prison for the worst criminals in the multiverse, and when Finn finally found him in Season 6, Martin showed zero interest in being a father. He was selfish, irresponsible, and completely unwilling to connect with the son he had abandoned. When Finn, Jake, Susan Strong, and BMO traveled to the islands in the Islands miniseries, Finn finally met his mother. Or rather, he met the robotic network that his mother had become. Minerva was overjoyed to see her son alive. She wanted him to stay. She wanted to protect him the way she protected everyone on the islands, by keeping him safe and contained and far from danger. But Finn had grown up as a hero. He could not live in a bubble, no matter how comfortable. He chose to leave the islands and return to Ooo, promising to stay in touch, but refusing to give up his life as an adventurer. The Islands miniseries also introduced a character named Dr. Gross, a human plus, meaning a human who had been augmented with cybernetic and biological modifications. Dr. Gross was obsessed with biological engineering and had created various hybrid creatures. She served as a kind of dark mirror to Princess Bubblegum, another scientist who creates life, but with less ethical restraint. The revelation that humans still existed, that there was an entire civilization of them living on isolated islands, fundamentally changed the context of Finn's story. He was not the last human. He was just the only one brave enough, or foolish enough, to live in the outside world. The humans on the islands had chosen safety over freedom, order over adventure, certainty over risk. Finn had chosen the opposite, not because he was smarter or braver, but because he had grown up in Ooo, raised by a dog and his wife, surrounded by magic and danger, and he did not know any other way to be. Now let's talk about BMO, because this little robot has one of the most quietly tragic backstories in the entire show. BMO is Finn and Jake's companion, a sentient video game console / robot / friend who lives in the tree fort with them. BMO is cheerful, playful, endlessly creative, and deeply loyal. Most viewers see BMO as comic relief, this adorable little machine who talks in a cute voice and pretends to be different characters when nobody is watching. But BMO's origin story adds a whole new dimension to the character. BMO was created by a man named Mo. Mo was one of the survivors of the Mushroom War, a brilliant inventor who kept himself alive for centuries, using cybernetic parts and artificial organs. Over time, he became more machine than human, his body failing piece by piece and being replaced by technology. Mo built an entire factory called MO Company, where he created hundreds of different robots, each designated with a 2-letter code followed by MO. There was AMO, SMO, DMO, and many others. But BMO was special. This was revealed in the Season 5 episode Be More, when BMO travels to the MO factory to get a critical repair. During the visit, we learn that Mo created BMO for a very specific purpose. Mo always wanted a son. He dreamed of having a child, a little person to love and play with and teach about the world. But Mo never had children. He lived alone in his factory, surrounded by robots, growing older and more mechanical, and the child he wanted never came, so he built one. BMO was not designed to be a utility robot or a worker drone. BMO was designed to be a companion for the child Mo never had. Every feature of BMO, the ability to play games, the cheerful personality, the capacity for imagination and creativity, was built specifically to entertain and befriend a kid. Mo programmed BMO to be a perfect playmate, and then sent the little robot out into the world, hoping that BMO would find a child who needed a friend. BMO wandered for a long time before finding Finn and Jake. The Distant Lands special BMO, released in 2020, shows part of this journey. Before meeting Finn and Jake, BMO ended up on a space station called the Drift, where a community of alien refugees had built a makeshift society. BMO had adventures there, made friends, confronted a villain named Hugo, and ultimately chose to leave and continue searching. BMO was always looking for the child Mo built it for. And then BMO found Finn, a human boy, the rarest thing in Ooo, living in a tree fort with his magical dog, the exact scenario Mo had hoped for. BMO became Finn's companion, his playmate, his friend. BMO played games with him, sang songs to him, kept him company during lonely nights. Everything Mo had programmed BMO to do, BMO was finally doing. The little robot fulfilled its purpose and found its person. But here is the part that gets me. BMO outlives everyone. In the series finale, set 1,000 years after the main events of the show, BMO is still functional, still alive, still telling stories. It is BMO who narrates the tale of the Gum War to the future adventurers Shermie and Beth. BMO sits on a hill and tells them about Finn and Jake and Bubblegum and Marceline, about the war and GOLB and the final battle. BMO is the historian of Ooo, the keeper of memories, the last witness to the age of heroes, and that means BMO watched Finn grow old and die. BMO watched Jake die. BMO watched everyone it loved age and fade away while it remained unchanged. A cheerful little video game console with the heart of a child and the lifespan of a machine. Mo built BMO to be a perfect friend, but he also inadvertently built BMO to experience the pain of outliving every friend it would ever have. The little robot was designed for love, and love means loss, and BMO will carry those losses for centuries after everyone it loved is gone. There is something particularly painful about BMO's cheerfulness in this context. BMO does not brood or grieve openly. BMO processes loss through imagination, through games, through pretending. When BMO is alone in the tree fort, it creates elaborate fantasy scenarios where it plays all the characters, talking to itself in different voices, acting out little dramas. What looks like childish play is actually a coping mechanism. BMO fills the silences of an empty house with the sound of its own imagination, because the alternative is confronting just how alone a little robot can be in a world that keeps moving forward while it stays the same. In that final scene, 1,000 years in the future, BMO is still smiling, still telling stories, still being cheerful, because that is what Mo built it to be. And maybe, in the Adventure Time universe, that is enough. Maybe carrying the memories of the people you loved is its own form of immortality. Maybe Finn and Jake and everyone else live on inside BMO's memory banks, replaying like favourite games that never get old. Now let's talk about something most people do not think about when they watch Adventure Time. The show has a fully realised afterlife, with its own hierarchy, its own rules, and its own problems. And the Distant Lands special, Together Again, takes us all the way through it. In the normal run of the show, death is treated casually. Characters die and come back. The Land of the Dead is visited a couple of times. Death himself shows up as a character, a skeletal figure who is surprisingly chill and plays music. But Together Again, which was released as part of the Distant Lands specials in 2021, goes much deeper. The premise of Together Again is that both Finn and Jake have died. Not in some dramatic sacrifice or heroic last stand. They just lived their lives and eventually, naturally, died. Finn grew into an adult, grew a beard, got a tattoo of Jake on his chest, and eventually passed away of what seems to be old age. Jake died at some point before Finn, which is implied in the earlier special Obsidian, where an adult Finn has the Jake tattoo, suggesting he got it as a memorial. When Finn dies, he arrives in the Dead Worlds, and this is where things get complex. The Adventure Time Afterlife is not a single place. It is a series of Dead Worlds, each one a different level or zone stacked on top of each other. Different Dead Worlds have different characteristics. Some are peaceful, some are chaotic, some are just strange, and each one is overseen by different death-related entities. The original ruler of the Dead Worlds was Death, the character we had seen earlier in the series. But by the time Finn arrives in the Afterlife, something has changed. A being called New Death has overthrown the original Death and taken control. New Death is merging all the Dead Worlds together, collapsing the entire Afterlife into a single unified realm under his control. This is bad for everyone who has already died, because the different Dead Worlds were designed to provide different experiences for different souls, and merging them together is causing chaos and suffering. Finn's goal is simple. He wants to find Jake. They were best friends, brothers, companions through every adventure, and being separated by death is something Finn cannot accept. So he navigates through the Dead Worlds, looking for Jake, fighting through the chaos caused by New Death's takeover. Along the way, Finn discovers that he can shapeshift into any of his past incarnations. He can become Shoko. He can become the butterfly. He can access the forms and abilities of every life he has lived before this one. This is a direct extension of the reincarnation law established in the Vault and the Comet. Even in death, Finn's cosmic history travels with him. He is not just Finn the human, he is every being the Blue Comet has ever been. Finn eventually finds Jake, and together they confront New Death. With help from allies including Tiffany, who had died earlier in the series and was now a resident of the Dead Worlds, and with guidance from an entity called Life, Finn defeats New Death and restores order to the Afterlife. The original Death presumably reclaims his position, and the Dead Worlds are separated again, returning to their proper structure. The episode ends with Finn and Jake together in the Afterlife, reunited at last. They choose to reincarnate together, to be reborn into new lives and have new adventures, and the show strongly implies that their next incarnations are Shermie and Beth. The two adventurers we see in the series finale's flash-forward sequence, 1,000 years in the future. Shermie looks and acts a lot like Finn. Beth, a large cat creature who is a descendant of Jake, looks and acts a lot like Jake. The cycle continues. The heroes die, they meet in the afterlife, they choose to come back, and they find each other again in new forms. This is the ultimate expression of Adventure Time's philosophy about impermanence and cycles. Nothing truly ends, not friendships, not love, not even death. Everything changes form, but the essence remains. Finn and Jake will always find each other in every life, in every era, because their bond is not just personal. It is cosmic. The blue comet and whatever force Jake represents are intertwined at a level deeper than individual identity. They are the universe's favourite pair, and the universe keeps putting them together because some stories are too important to tell just once. And that brings us to one of the most mind-bending concepts in the entire show: Prismo and the Time Room. Prismo is one of the most unique characters in Adventure Time, and his existence raises questions about the fundamental nature of reality in the show's universe. Here is the setup. There is a place outside of normal space-time called the Time Room. It exists beyond the multiverse, in a space where the normal rules of physics and causality do not apply. Inside the Time Room, there is a futon. On that futon, there is an old man, and the old man is dreaming. Prismo is the dream. He is a two-dimensional pink shadow projected on the wall of the Time Room, and he exists only as long as the old man is asleep. If the old man wakes up, Prismo ceases to exist. The old man on the futon is technically Prismo's physical body, but the consciousness, the personality, the being that calls itself Prismo is entirely contained within the dream. He is a living thought, a sentient idea, a person made of sleep. As the keeper of the Time Room, Prismo has the power to grant wishes, but not in the genie lamp, rub it and get 3 wishes sense. Prismo operates on a cosmic level. His wishes can alter the fabric of reality, create and destroy entire timelines, and reshape the multiverse. When the Lich reached the Time Room in the Season 4 finale and Season 5 premiere, Finn the human and Jake the dog, the consequences were universe-shaking. The Lich wished for the extinction of all life. Prismo, bound by his own rules, had to grant it. But Finn was there too, and he made a counter-wish. Finn wished that the Lich never existed. This did not cancel the Lich's wish directly. Instead, it created an entirely new timeline, a parallel universe called Farmworld, where the events leading to the Lich's creation unfolded differently. In Farmworld, Simon Petrikov used the Ice Crown to freeze the mushroom bomb before it could detonate, sacrificing his life in the process. Without the bomb's detonation, the Lich was never born. Humanity survived. But the frozen bomb remained hanging over the world like a sword of Damocles, and the crown, grieving the loss of its master, unleashed its ice magic uncontrollably, eventually freezing a significant portion of the planet. Jake's wish to bring himself and Finn back home overrode the Lich's wish and restored the main timeline, but the Farmworld continued to exist as a separate parallel universe, with its own version of Finn living a completely different life. This established one of the most important rules of Prismo's wish magic. Wishes do not erase each other, they create branches. Every wish spawns a new reality that exists alongside the original. The multiverse is not a fixed structure. It is a tree that grows new branches every time someone makes a wish in the Time Room. Later in the series, the Lich found another way to reach Prismo. In the Season 6 episodes, Wake Up and Escape from the Citadel, the Lich killed the old man on the futon, which caused Prismo to vanish from existence. Without Prismo, the Time Room was unguarded, and the Lich was able to access the Citadel, the cosmic prison where the worst criminals in the multiverse were held. This is also where Martin Mertens, Finn's father, was imprisoned, and the Lich's attack on the Citadel is what led to Finn and Martin's disastrous reunion. But Prismo was not gone permanently. In one of the show's most clever and complex time loop sequences, Finn and Jake found a way to bring Prismo back. The Season 6 episode is that you plays out like a puzzle box. Jake had previously spent time with Prismo in the Time Room, and during that time, Prismo had given Jake a pickled version of himself as a backup plan. The specifics of how the resurrection works involve Jake becoming the new dreamer on the futon, essentially becoming Prismo's new host body, which means Jake is simultaneously himself and the old man whose dream is Prismo. It is confusing, and it is supposed to be. Time in the Time Room does not work like time in normal space. The important takeaway is that Prismo's existence is fragile. He is the most powerful wish-granting entity in the multiverse, capable of creating and destroying entire realities, and his continued existence depends entirely on one old man staying asleep on a futon. If that man wakes up or dies, Prismo is gone. The most powerful being in the universe is also the most vulnerable. There is something deeply Adventure Time about that. Prismo's friendship with Jake is also worth noting. Despite being a cosmic entity, Prismo is kind of a chill dude. He likes hanging out, making artisanal pickles, and having low-key conversations about life and existence. His friendship with Jake is genuine and warm, one of those unlikely connections that the show excels at portraying. A shape-shifting dog and a two-dimensional wish shadow, just being bros in a dimension outside of time. Now let's talk about the end of everything. The series finale of Adventure Time, Come Along With Me, is where all the threads we have been discussing converge into one massive, chaotic, emotionally devastating conclusion. The finale begins with a war. Uncle Gumbald, whom we discussed earlier as the creation Princess Bubblegum made to be her family before he tried to dumb her down with Dum Dum Juice, had been restored to his original form near the end of the series. He was angry. He wanted revenge on Bubblegum for turning him into a punch bowl for hundreds of years. He gathered an army, recruiting past villains who held grudges against the Candy Kingdom, and prepared for what became known as the Gum War. But before the war could really begin, Gumbald's own ally, Lolly, who had been Bubblegum's aunt before being turned into the candy person Manfred, betrayed him. Lolly turned Gumbald back into a punch bowl and made peace with Bubblegum. The war was over before it started, or it should have been, because Betty Groff, still desperate to save Simon, was performing a dark magic ritual at that exact moment. She was trying to summon enough power to cure Simon permanently, to find a way to remove the crown's curse without killing him, but her ritual went wrong. Instead of finding a cure, she accidentally summoned Golb. Golb's arrival changed everything. This was not a villain with motivations or demands. This was entropy incarnate, a cosmic force of dissolution that warped reality simply by existing. Golb's breath fused creatures together into hideous monsters. Its presence caused the fabric of Ooo to destabilize. Buildings melted, the ground cracked, the sky turned red. Every living thing in Ooo was in danger of being absorbed, dissolved, or erased. The citizens of Ooo, both Bubblegum's forces and the remnants of Gumbald's army, united against this common threat. Finn, Jake, Marceline, Bubblegum, the Ice King, Lumpy Space Princess, BMO, and dozens of other characters fought side by side against GOLB's monsters. But conventional attacks were useless. You cannot punch entropy. You cannot slash chaos with a sword. What defeated Golb, or at least drove it back, was music. Specifically, a song. BMO began singing and the other characters joined in, one by one. The power of their collective harmony created a force that Golb's dissolution could not overcome. This ties back to the show's recurring theme about the power of art, music, and emotional connection. Golb represents the breakdown of all meaning and order. Music represents the creation of beauty and harmony from chaos. The citizens of Ooo did not defeat Golb with violence. They defeated it with the simple act of making something beautiful together. But the battle was not over for everyone. Finn, the Ice King, and Betty were swallowed by Golb during the fighting. Inside the cosmic entity, a strange process occurred. Golb's digestive system strips beings down to their essential forms, removing everything that is not fundamental to their identity. For the Ice King, this meant the crown's magic was separated from Simon Petrikov's humanity. Simon emerged from the process as himself again. No crown, no ice powers, no madness. Just a man in glasses, confused and scared and free for the first time in 1,000 years. Betty emerged as herself too, stripped of Magic Man's powers, just a human woman standing next to the man she loved. For one beautiful, terrible moment, they were Simon and Betty again. Two people who had not seen each other clearly in over a millennium. But Golb was still there, still a threat to everything outside. Betty grabbed the ice crown, which had also been reset to its essential form by Golb's digestion. The crown was now back to its original state. The wish-granting artifact Urgence Evergreen had created 65 million years ago, before the dinosaur Gunther's wish corrupted it. Betty tried to wish Golb out of existence, but the crown grants your deepest wish, not your stated wish, and Betty's deepest wish, the thing buried at the very core of her being, was to protect Simon, so the crown fused Betty with Golb, the cosmic entity of chaos, and a woman who loved a man so much she would become a monster to save him, merged into a single being, Golbetti. The new entity was still massive, still cosmic, still incomprehensible, but it was no longer purely destructive. Betty's love gave it something Gold never had before: intention, purpose. Golbetty left Ooo through a portal, taking Betty with it, and the immediate threat was over. Simon was free, the curse was broken, but Betty was gone. She had sacrificed her identity, her humanity, her very existence to protect the man she loved. And Simon had to live with that knowledge for the rest of his life. After Golbetty's departure, the abandoned ice crown landed on the ground near Gunter the penguin. Gunter, still containing the dormant essence of Orgalorg, grabbed the crown and put it on. And Gunter's deepest wish, as we discussed, was to be like the Ice King. So Gunter became the Ice Thing, a new ice wizard for a new era, and the crown's cycle continued. Fern, the grass clone of Finn, who had been created when the grass sword merged with the Finn sword, disintegrated during the battle. But before he was completely gone, he asked Finn to plant him where the tree fort used to be. Finn planted the small seedling, and it immediately began to grow. 1,000 years later, that seedling had become an enormous tree, taller than anything else in Ooo. Shermie and Beth, the new adventurers, climbed that tree and found the Finn sword reborn at its peak. The Finn sword, the tree fort, and Fern were all one thing now, a living monument to Finn's legacy. The finale's epilogue shows us the immediate aftermath. Bubblegum and Marceline are together, a couple at last. Simon is free, human, and alive. BMO is telling stories to whoever will listen. And life in Ooo goes on as it always does, because that is what life does. Now, speaking of Simon being free, the spin-off series Adventure Time Fiona and Cake picks up his story and reveals something absolutely wild about the Fiona and Cake universe. Throughout the original Adventure Time series, the Ice King wrote fan fiction about gender-swapped versions of everyone he knew. Fiona was his version of Finn. Cake was his version of Jake. Prince Gumball was his version of Princess Bubblegum. These stories appeared in several episodes, presented as the Ice King's creative writing, and they were treated as exactly that. Fiction. Made-up stories by a lonely old wizard, except they were not made up. The Fiona and Cake spin-off, which began in 2023, revealed that the Fiona and Cake universe was a real, fully realized parallel world that had been hidden inside the Ice Crown. More specifically, it had been placed there by Prismo. At some point, the universe containing Fiona, Cake, and all the gender-swapped characters was stored inside the crown's magical matrix. When the Ice King wore the crown, this universe existed within his mind, and his fan fiction was not fiction at all. He was unconsciously channeling the real events of a real parallel world that he carried around on his head. When Simon was freed from the crown in the series finale, the Fiona and Cake universe was suddenly in danger. Without the crown's magic sustaining it, and without a host mind to exist within, the universe was at risk of collapsing. Simon, now dealing with depression, loneliness, and the loss of Betty, attempted a magic ritual to see Betty one more time. The ritual went wrong and accidentally pulled Fiona and Cake out of their universe and into Simon's world. What followed was a multiverse adventure. Simon, Fiona, and Cake travelled across multiple realities, pursued by an entity called the Scarab, a cosmic auditor whose job was to maintain the boundaries between universes. The Scarab considered the Fiona and Cake universe to be an unauthorized creation, a bootleg reality that should not exist, and he wanted to destroy it. Through their journey, Simon confronted his grief over Betty, his identity crisis after losing the crown, and his struggle to find meaning in a life that no longer included magic or 1,000 years of memories. Fiona confronted the fact that her entire world might be artificial, a fiction written by a crazy ice wizard. Cake confronted the possibility that she was not real in the way she always believed. Eventually, they found Golbetty. Simon got to speak with Betty one more time, to tell her he loved her, to hear her say goodbye properly. It was the closure he needed, and through a series of events involving Prismo's time room and the mechanics of multiverse creation, Fiona's universe was authorized as a real, independent reality. It was detached from Simon's mind and given its own existence, separate from the Ice Crown, separate from anyone's imagination. Fiona and Cake were real. Their world was real, and they would continue to have adventures in their own universe, free from the risk of being erased. Simon returned to Ooo at peace for the first time since losing Betty. He threw away the remnants of his old life, moved in with Marceline and Bubblegum, and got a job teaching the history of magical artifacts at WizArts in Wizard City. He was finally, truly moving on. The Fiona and Cake revelation adds an incredible layer to the show's mythology. It means that the Ice Crown was not just a curse, it was a universe. An entire reality with billions of lives and countless stories, all contained within a jeweled crown sitting on a deranged ice wizard's head. And the fan fiction episodes, which most viewers dismissed as silly filler, were actually windows into a parallel world that was just as real and just as important as the main Adventure Time universe. Nothing in this show is throwaway. Everything means something. Now let's talk about a character that most people overlook entirely, but who is secretly one of the most dangerous and fascinating beings in all of Ooo: Peppermint Butler. Peppermint Butler is Princess Bubblegum's loyal servant and right-hand man. He is a small candy person shaped like a peppermint, and on the surface, he seems like the most harmless character in the show. He serves tea, delivers messages, organizes events, and generally does whatever Bubblegum needs him to do. He is polite, efficient, and unassuming, which makes it all the more unsettling when you start paying attention to the details. Throughout the series, there are constant hints that Peppermint Butler is deeply involved in dark magic. Not dabbles, not casual interest. Deep, serious, dangerous dark magic. In the Season 3 episode, Return to the Nightosphere, Peppermint Butler is shown to have a personal relationship with Death. Not a distant acquaintance, a friendship. He knows Death well enough to have casual conversations with him, well enough to call in favors, well enough that Death respects him as a peer. For a candy person the size of a mint, that is extraordinary. In the Season 4 episode Beyond This Earthly Realm, Peppermint Butler is caught performing what appears to be a dark ritual in the woods. He has a summoning circle, candles, and what look like occult symbols drawn in the dirt. When Finn and Jake stumble upon the scene, Peppermint Butler's eyes glow with an eerie light, and he warns them in a genuinely threatening voice to never speak of what they saw. It is played for laughs, like everything in this show, but the implication is clear. Bubblegum's butler is practicing necromancy, demonology, or something similarly dark on his off hours. He can open portals to the Nightosphere, the dimension ruled by Hunson Abadir, which is essentially the demon realm. He knows forbidden spells. He has knowledge of the occult that impresses even ancient magical beings. In one episode, Marceline's father Hunson Abadir, the Lord of Evil himself, seems vaguely unsettled by Peppermint Butler's knowledge of dark arts. When the actual Lord of Evil is uncomfortable around your candy butler, something deeply wrong is going on. The Season 7 episode Nemesis provides more context. In that episode, a character named Peacemaster tries to destroy Peppermint Butler because he recognizes the danger that Peppermint Butler poses. Peacemaster is basically a demon hunter, and he targets Peppermint Butler specifically because he can sense the dark energy surrounding him. Peppermint Butler's response to being attacked is not to run or hide. It is to demonstrate, with terrifying calm, just how much power he actually has. The episode confirms that Peppermint Butler is genuinely dangerous, that his knowledge of dark magic is not superficial, and that the only thing keeping him from being a threat is his loyalty to Princess Bubblegum, and that loyalty is interesting in itself. Peppermint Butler serves Bubblegum with absolute devotion. He has been with her for hundreds of years, possibly since the founding of the Candy Kingdom. He does everything she asks, supports her decisions, and protects her interests. But he also has this entirely separate life of dark magical practice that Bubblegum seems to either not know about or deliberately ignore. Is Bubblegum aware that her butler is a necromancer? Does she tolerate it because his skills are useful? Or has Peppermint Butler been hiding it from her for centuries? In the distant land's special wizard city, Peppermint Butler's story takes an interesting turn. Following the events of the series finale, he is somehow de-aged back to a childlike state and loses most of his magical knowledge and memories. He enrolls at WizArts, a school for wizards in Wizard City, to relearn the magic he has lost. This version of Peppermint Butler is innocent, eager to learn, and unaware of the dark arts he once practiced. It is a fresh start for a character who had spent centuries straddling the line between loyal servant and dark magician. By the time of the Fiona and Cake series, Peppermint Butler has apparently regained much of his knowledge and is now a student at WizArts, alongside Simon Petrikov, who teaches there. The dynamic between them is interesting. Simon, a man who spent 1,000 years as a dark magical being, and Peppermint Butler, a candy person who secretly practiced dark magic for centuries, both trying to navigate a more normal existence through education and community. Peppermint Butler is one of those characters who reveals more the closer you look. On the surface, he is a joke, a candy butler who is secretly spooky. But underneath that surface, he represents something the show explores again and again. The idea that the people closest to us often have hidden depths, secret lives, and capabilities we never suspect. Bubblegum trusted Peppermint Butler completely, and he never betrayed that trust. But he also never told her everything about who he was and what he could do. In Ooo, as in real life, even the people we love most have parts of themselves they keep hidden. And speaking of hidden depths, let's talk about what might be the most important theme in all of Adventure Time. The idea that nothing ever truly ends, and that the meaning of life is found not in permanence, but in the act of continuing. The show's philosophical core is captured in 2 songs. The first is Everything Stays, sung by Marceline during the Stakes miniseries. The song's lyrics are deceptively simple. Everything stays right where you left it. Everything stays, but it still changes. Ever so slightly, daily and nightly, in little ways, when everything stays. Marceline wrote this song, or rather, it was a song her mother sang to her when she was a child. It is about the nature of memory and change. The people you loved are still there in your memory, exactly as you remember them. But everything is also always changing, shifting, evolving in ways so subtle you barely notice. Nothing is permanent, but nothing is truly gone either. The people who leave your life leave an imprint, and that imprint stays, even as the details slowly transform over time. For Marceline, who has lived for over 1,000 years and watched everyone she has ever cared about age and change, and often die, this philosophy is not abstract. It is survival. She has to believe that the people she lost still exist in some form, that the love they shared still matters, or the weight of 1,000 years of grief would crush her. Everything Stays is not just a pretty sentiment. It is the mantra of an immortal being fighting to find meaning in an endless life. The second song is Time Adventure, sung by BMO in the series finale as the citizens of Ooo fight against GOLB. Time is an illusion that helps things make sense, so we are always living in the present tense. It seems unforgiving when a good thing ends. But you and I will always be back then. You and I will always be back then. This song takes the philosophy of Everything Stays even further. BMO is saying that time itself is not real in the way we experience it. We think of the past as gone and the future as uncertain, but that is just a story our minds tell to make sense of existence. In reality, every moment exists simultaneously. The moment Finn and Jake played video games in the tree fort is still happening. The moment Simon gave Marceline a stuffed toy in the ruins of civilization is still happening. The moment Bubblegum and Marceline kissed while fighting Golb is still happening. None of these moments have ended. They are all still right there, right where we left them, happening and happened and happening again. This is not just poetry. The show backs it up with its mythology. The catalyst comets cycle through incarnations, bringing the same forces of good and evil back to Earth every 1,000 years. The elementals reincarnate across eras, the same 4 forces finding new hosts and playing out the same dramas in new contexts. Finn has been a comet, a butterfly, a blob, a thief, and a boy, and he will be something new after he dies. Jake was a tiger 1,000 years ago and will probably be something else 1,000 years from now. Death is not an ending in Adventure Time. It is a transition, a change of form, a slight adjustment, daily and nightly, in little ways. Even the series itself embodies this philosophy. Adventure Time ended its original run in September 2018. But then came the Distant Lands specials, and then Fiona and Cake. And then the show's influence continued to ripple through animation, inspiring new creators and new stories. The show ended, but it also stayed. It stayed in the memories of everyone who watched it. It stayed in the lessons it taught about love and loss and growing up. It stayed in the characters who even now feel like friends you made when you were younger, who moved away but never stopped mattering. The reincarnation cycle, the catalyst comets, the elementals, the dead worlds, all of these mythological systems are just the show's way of saying the same thing over and over in different forms. Nothing ends, everything continues, the shapes change, The names change, the details shift, but the core remains. Love remains. Friendship remains. The desire to do good remains. The struggle between life and death, between creation and destruction, between staying and leaving, that struggle remains, cycling through incarnation after incarnation, comet after comet, era after era, until time itself is revealed to be exactly what BMO said it was. An illusion that helps things make sense. And now think about what that means for every character we have discussed tonight. Simon Petrikov lost 1,000 years of his life to a cursed crown. But his love for Betty survived the curse. His bond with Marceline survived the madness. The man he was before the crown still existed inside the Ice King, buried deep but never truly gone. Everything stayed. Marceline lost her mother, lost Simon, lost 1,000 years to vampirism and grief. But she found bubblegum, she found music, she found a way to carry every loss she had ever experienced and transform it into art and love and meaning. Everything stayed. Princess Bubblegum created her own family and then lost them to Gumball's betrayal. She built a kingdom to fill the void. She pushed people away and pulled them back. She made mistakes and learned from them and made new mistakes and learned from those too. And through it all, she kept going, kept building, kept creating, kept trying to make something beautiful out of the rubble of a ruined world. Everything stayed. Finn was a comet, a butterfly, a thief, a boy. He loved and lost and fought and fell and got back up. He was offered transcendence by the purple comet and chose to stay human, to stay imperfect, to stay mortal, because that is where the meaning is. Not in cosmic power or eternal life, but in the messy, beautiful, heartbreaking business of being a person who cares about other people. Everything stayed, and BMO, the little robot who outlived everyone, who sat on a hill 1,000 years in the future and told stories about the friends it had loved and lost, BMO is the living proof of everything stays. Because as long as someone remembers, as long as someone tells the story, the people in that story are still alive. They are still adventuring, still laughing, still fighting, still loving, still being exactly who they were in the moment that mattered most. Time is an illusion. You and I will always be back then. That is Adventure Time. That is the mythology hidden inside a show about a boy and his dog. A story about the end of the world that is really about how the world never ends. A story about death that is really about how death is just another form of change. A story about 1,000 years of history that is really about the way every moment, every connection, every act of love and courage reverberates forward through time and space and incarnation forever. If you are still awake, thank you for taking this journey through the lore of Ooo with me. If you drifted off somewhere around the elemental cycle or Finn's past lives, that is perfectly fine too. That is kind of what this video was for. Either way, the stories we talked about tonight are still happening. They are still right there, right where Pendleton Ward and his team left them, in 10 seasons and 4 specials, and a spin-off series, waiting for anyone who wants to visit them again. Everything stays. If you enjoyed this deep dive, consider subscribing. I cover lore like this regularly, pulling apart the hidden mythologies of the shows and stories that shaped our childhoods. And if you want to fall asleep to another one of these, that video is on screen right now. I will see you in the next one. Sweet dreams, and remember, the fun will never end. It is adventure time.